Hi and welcome or welcome back. If you've watched my previous bullet journaling videos, you will know that I had a failed attempt a few years ago to complete a bullet journal. And last year I discovered a course on Domestika about how to combine bullet journaling with illustrations by Men Pons that I really liked and decided to give it another try. So this here is my completed Leuchtturm 1917 bullet journal. I believe it's the second version specially intended for bullet journaling. And you can see here on the right side that I set some goals for myself with this bullet journal, mainly to be more creative in small ways. Some bullet journalists focus a lot on productivity and some focus more on the creative side of using the journals. Mine definitely leans more towards creativity, but you will kind of see me oscillate between those two mindsets over the course of this journal. But without any further ado, my next pages were index pages. As you can see here, they are unfinished, but I also never looked at this page again. There's still a blank page behind it. I might complete this one, but to be honest, it really didn't matter to me at all. I got a lot more value out of this overview of the year where I wrote down everyone's birthdays and then I would transfer them into the monthly and weekly overviews. In addition to birthdays, I also wrote down special events like concerts, special getaway weekends, as well as my vacation, sickness, and home office days, because these are actually relevant for my next tax declaration. I also came up with this wonderful page about actions or special tasks that I wanted to do regularly. And you can see that I stopped tracking these. My problem with this page was basically that once it was out of sight, it was also out of mind. So while I did do a bunch of these goals, I didn't really track them very consistently. I think if I were to try bullet journaling again, I would skip this kind of page. My next page saw a lot more action in my previous bullet journaling attempt. It's basically a projects page where I could brainstorm ideas for organizing stuff or things that I wanted to tackle in the future, such as photo books here on the right side. On the left side, I came up with some ideas on how to declutter my art table or my art corner, and this was rather successful actually. Since I do consider myself a hobby artist, I have an ideas page whenever ideas strike me for my art or for my YouTube channel. Unfortunately, I wasn't too good at completing any of these, but I did rework my channel's intro and now I've dropped it all together, and I did rework all of my thumbnails. My next page is equally important to me. I have a habit of not finishing my artwork, so I'm tracking my progress here and writing down what I have floating around so that I can get around to finishing it at some point, I hope. Another page that I took from my old bullet journal is a gift idea page, where I basically wrote down ideas throughout the year as they came to me for my family members. Unfortunately, I was really unimaginative this year when it came to gifts. So that is why this page is mostly blank, but generally speaking, I can recommend this kind of page. And I also have a page dedicated to the things that have been on the back of my mind for quite some time, but I wasn't sure if I should buy them or not. I ended up buying 4 out of 5 of these. The idea was, if these things don't leave my mind, then maybe I should just get them at some point. Now we are leaving what bullet journalists call their collections and we're entering the calendarium section. Similar to my previous pages, I started out with combinations of watercolors, special pens, and stickers. This one here is one of my favorites, but just to be completely transparent, most of these pages were inspired by Pinterest pages, so these are not really designs that I came up with on my own. Although this particular page was inspired by a certain watercolor by Daniel Smith called Moonglow that I became mildly obsessed with this year. You will also see me switch between horizontal and vertical designs, and I kept doing this for most of my journal. Something I did in my old journal was to kind of review the month after it was over and see how well I did on my trackers, and this time I wanted to write down any songs, TV shows or games that particularly stuck out to me. So this is what this kind of page should look like, but you will see me fail at this one as we go along. At the beginning of this journal, I was so hyped and I had so many ideas for what to paint. I made an entire month dedicated to Final Fantasy VIII, and there's even a video about painting these pages on my channel. It was a ton of work, but also a lot of fun. And these pages are some of my favorite pages in this journal. And I also made a video about my space-themed month of March. I used gouache here as my medium, but I do want to show you how dirty my bullet journal looks now. A lot of these didn't really stand the test of time, you could say. This might just be because of the friction of the pages rubbing against each other when the journal is closed. Now, this weekly spread is based on the game No Man's Sky. And here's a scene from Star Wars. This is one of my favorite pages as well. You might notice me jumping between languages here as well. My mother language is German, so I wrote a bunch of stuff in German, and sometimes when I thought I might show the page to others, I wrote it in English, but I wasn't really consistent throughout this journal. April is another lovely month with lots of flower-themed art. I tried some new markers that I got on here, but also used watercolors and fineliners a lot. If these designs look awfully good to you, it's because I was following the instructions in this book. I believe I got this for my birthday. It's by Anastasia Sälinger and it's called Watercolor Floral Subjects with Watercolors and Fineliners. If you speak German, I can highly recommend this book because it was a lot of fun even for me as someone who's not much of a flower person. And here you can see my monthly review page kind of starting to slip. This is what it is going to look like most of the time now. I just never really felt motivated to go back and fill these out unless something came to my mind immediately. After these first months, two things happened. For one, I felt that I was spending a lot more time bullet journaling than actually making art. And I was getting a little bit burned out from this. And I also realized just how wobbly these pages get in combination of watercolors. So I wanted to take it a bit easier and mostly use other media. So the first pages here in May were all done in inks. I got really small bottles for my birthday and I really loved trying them out here. And there's a random marker page in here. June is more of the same, basically trying out markers as well as inks and just aiming for a bit of variation between the weekly spreads. In July, I figured I would simplify things further and maybe just use some new stickers that I got as decoration, but then I never had the space for them. I used my new markers to write down the month and the dates, but that was basically all I did here and just kept it very simple. In August, I felt ready to revisit watercolors in this journal, just in a really simple way with color gradients. This was the first month where I stuck to a consistent design between my weekly spreads. I do like how simple yet colorful these pages are. Now, September was difficult. We had a stressful event at work, followed by a long vacation, so I knew I had to complete this month in my journal very early on, and I would not have time to add more pages while this was going on. This was the first month where I decided to add my trackers to the monthly page rather than the weekly pages. And I found this to be very unhelpful for me because out of sight, out of mind. It was great for trimming down my designs of the weekly pages though. I went with an extremely simple design of basically splitting my pages into quarters and using stickers for the days of the month. I still kept my to-do section as I do every week, and I found it extremely helpful, especially when preparing for our vacation. During our vacation, I wrote down where we would be that day, as well as the name of the hotel at the bottom of each page. I did like the simplicity of this design. I just found it a little bit too bland to really enjoy looking at it more often, so I tried it with a bit more color for October again. At this point, my husband sort of discovered my bullet journal and how nice these to-do lists can be, and asked me to write down a to-do list for him inside my journal. That was quite unexpected. This was the first month where I forgot to write my month in review page, but I found that I didn't miss it, so I started skipping it from this point on. So after this, I was back to using my trackers on each weekly page and using markers more often. I figured they would be gentle enough on the pages. This super uninspired page here is basically one where I fell behind and I completed it later, and that's why I didn't really bother to make it look pretty. I only fell behind a couple of times. For the last month, I wanted to do something special again, so I tried extra hard for December, while also keeping the weekly spreads very consistent. So this felt like a really good blend between decorating but not spending ages on each page. And I used acrylic markers, which work really well in this journal. This final page here was kind of unnecessary because it's also included in my new calendar, but I really wanted to have the feeling that I completed an entire year of bullet journaling. I have a bunch of empty pages left in the back, which I will probably use for a variety of to-do lists. I almost skipped this one here. This is a page where I wrote down how long certain makeup or cosmetics last me. Some of them have not been used up yet, but some of them have, and I just forgot to write down when that happened. And further in the back you get my marker swatches from my Sailor markers. I've reviewed these before. And the swatches of my small ink bottles that I got for my birthday. On the right side is a font that I found online and never used in my journal. Here on the left side is the handwriting or the font that Manon teaches in her Domestica course. And I used the right side, the last page, for some ink and marker tests. And that is it. So what I learned from this, well, for one, watercolors really buckle the pages here, so it was a lot more enjoyable to use markers or acrylic pens. but I also learned that I'm inherently lazy, and anything that is not visible on my weekly spread basically doesn't exist for me. Even the trackers, which I had on most of the weekly pages, really only worked for me if I opened my bullet journal every day, or if I left it lying around while it's open and I looked at it each evening. Then they worked as a reminder for me, but I'm still not sure if I tracked everything accurately, because sometimes I did these things and I just didn't write it down. There was also a weird, difficult to find balance for me between keeping my bullet journal pretty enough that I like to open it more often and look at it, but also not getting overwhelmed with working on it too much and then neglecting all of my other artsy things that I wanted to do. So this leads me to the question, would I do this again? And the answer is probably yes, but there is a certain time commitment even when I keep things simple. And when I started this journal, I already knew that 2025 would be an extremely busy year at my job. Before I started this bullet journal, I had seen these calendars by Mata Books in a bookstore and basically saved this information for later because I knew I would buy a pre-printed calendar at some point for 2025. Now, this one comes without a lot of the collections that I used in my bullet journal, so I might put some of these in the back. It does have a yearly overview that I skipped here because I already entered people's birthdays into it. This is pretty enough for me and has a layout that I think will work well, especially because I can put my to-dos in the notes section. My preferred layout is something that I learned this year. And the little artworks on here do look like they are painted in watercolors, so that makes me happy. So I knew right off the bat that I wouldn't continue bullet journaling in 2025, but something else happened that has further cemented this. If you've been super perceptive and also speak German, you might have noticed an overabundance of certain doctor's appointments here. As it turns out, I will not be working this special stressful work event next year because we are expecting a little baby. I will probably use the remaining pages of my bullet journal to write down to-do lists and things I want to get ready before then. And I would definitely need a calendar next year. And maybe once things have settled down a bit, I can return to bullet journaling. So thank you for watching and looking back on my year with you. I guess for next year you can look forward to even fewer videos from me. But I hope I will still get to chat with a few of you in the comments. Thanks for your time and see you next time. Bye.